Welcome to the Dream Nation Breakfast Club. I'm your host, Josh Valentin, and the Dream Nation Breakfast Club is brought to you by the Journey Podcast. And I'm really happy to be here with you all. We have a really great session lined up for you all. If you're new to the Breakfast Club, welcome. If you're wondering what in the world is this all about, it's actually where we gather together with our community every single Tuesday from 7 a.m. to about 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've been hosting the Breakfast Club for many years now, and the Breakfast Club pretty much covers everything centered around personal development, life coaching, things that could essentially make your life better. And happy to be here with you all. I know we have people who tune in from different parts of the world. So wherever you are tuning in from, if you don't mind, drop a comment. Let us know what city you are representing here. And also, if you're watching the replay, drop an R in the comments. Let us know if you're watching the replay. I know we are live streaming. If you want to engage with me live every single week, you can hop over to dnbreakfastclub.com. dnbreakfastclub.com. You can actually hop on, engage with me. I can read all your comments and all that good stuff. And you could also watch the recordings of the Breakfast Club pretty much on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, all the different platforms that are out there, all the main platforms. So also, if you want to catch past recordings, you can hop over to the Journey Podcast with Josh Valentin and find not only the Breakfast Club, but also lots of interviews that I've done with many incredible friends of mine who are really successful in different lines of work. So I know you guys will get a lot of value from some of those interviews, and we're about to get this show on the road. If you guys are watching, if you don't mind, drop a like, comment, share, tag someone who can get value here this morning. And we're about to get this show on the road. Today, we are going to be covering the gap between inspiration and execution. The gap between inspiration and execution. And I know a lot of people are going to get value from this. And I think we could all relate to just different dreams that we have. This message is going to be for those who are, currently working on a dream, somebody who is actively looking to just do more with their life. And maybe you had those seasons of great inspiration and you just can't really bridge the gap between being inspired and actually executing on something. So if you're looking to just take a lot more action and maybe you're looking to find a way to actually execute, maybe you're someone who tunes into a lot of personal development and you get super motivated, you get inspired, you listen to the audio books, you read the books, you go to the seminars, but you haven't really gotten around to actually applying the knowledge. And as you all probably hear me say time and time again, knowledge isn't power, the application of knowledge is power. So, how do you bridge that gap from being inspired to actually executing on that inspiration? So, we're going to be covering a lot centered around that. And as you all know, who have been tuning into the Breakfast Club for years, we typically cover different life hacks and fun facts in the first 30 minutes. And before we do that, I see we have people tuning in from different parts of the world. So I see we got Virginia Beach in the house. Shout out to Virginia Beach. We've got New York. We've got Texas. We've got Jamaica. Welcome. We have the Bahamas. People tuning in from different parts. So welcome, everyone. Happy to be here with you all as always. So let's get this show on the road. Now, to get us kickstarted, we have some life hacks. The very first life hack that I have for you guys is a password trick for growth. So I found this to be really interesting. Basically, this life hack works. The way it works is you change your passwords to your goals. So for example, if your goal is to get in shape, or maybe you want to run a marathon, what your password can be is run 5 miles at daily, right? And it's just a constant reminder. Or maybe you have a money goal and your password is $100K revenue 2025. And every login is basically becoming a subconscious affirmation. So really, really great hack for those of you who are committed to a specific goal. And also just having notepads, sticky notes. I know in the early days of my personal development journey, we would have these sticky notes on our bathroom mirrors to have these affirmations that we would read off to ourselves. And you want to write affirmations in present tense as if it's already happening, right? So for example, if you're looking to have more confidence, then you want to have an affirmation saying that, I am confident rather than I want to be confident. You always state it as is, because the thing about the subconscious mind is it doesn't know the difference between what's real and what's not real, what's a truth and what's a lie. And it's a faithful servant. So that's why affirmations are so powerful. So having that subconscious affirmation with your password can definitely be a really great hack for you all. Next up, we have another life hack, and that is use do not disturb to think clearly. Use do not disturb to think clearly. And I know I definitely have always, when it comes to just, well, not always, but in recent years, I noticed that distraction was probably like my biggest enemy when it comes to execution. And I had to find different ways to be as focused as possible and eliminate as many distractions as possible. And one of the ways that I've done that is through the do not disturb. So the thing about some people like, well, if I put my phone on do not disturb, how are people going to reach me? Listen, if you can get to a point where all of your calls are essentially scheduled in, I know obviously not everybody can live life in that way. Maybe you have some kids that you have to be in direct communication with. However, if you can get to a point where you can keep your phone on do not disturb and just go into deep work mode, you'd be surprised at how much work you'll get done. You see, what tends to happen is we'll find ourselves in this state of execution where we're taking action, we're doing the things that we need to be doing. And then guess what happens? A phone call comes in, an email alert, or a text comes in. And now you go from this optimal flow state to now taking these messages, and it ends up affecting your execution. It affects your ability to produce. It knocks off your flow state. And it takes a while. The flow state is sort of like getting into momentum. And it takes a little time to get that momentum going. And every single time you answer a text message or you look at a notification or you're doom scrolling, it knocks you out of that flow state. So having your phone in do not disturb can go a long way when it comes to productivity. So you'll be shocked at how productive and creative you'll be without any interruptions. Okay, so next up we have silence negative thoughts with this phrase. Whenever your mind says, I can't, respond with, but what if I can? It disrupts negative patterns instantly. So we all have those moments, on our journey where, that self-talk kicks in, and we just feel like, we can't do something, and we're having all this negative self-talk. And the thing about self-talk is you never want to say something about yourself that you don't want to be true. So, for example, if you feel as if you can't run for 30 minutes a day, right? You have to be mindful at actually saying that, because what you vocalize, you actually internalize. So every time you catch yourself saying, I can't, you question, but what if I can? Because it opens up the mind to possibility. So I remember learning this early on from Robert Kiyosaki in Rich Dad Poor Dad. Rather than saying, I can't afford something, open up your mind by saying, well, how can I afford something? And he had mentioned that that's the difference between people who are wealthy versus people who are not, is a lot of people who are wealthy will simply rephrase something as, rather than it being, I can't afford it, they ask themselves, how can I afford it? Right? It's a completely different way of just thinking. And it goes a long, long way. And this could be pretty much with anything. If there was a possibility, because the moment you say I can't, you cut off all possibility for resourcefulness, all possibility for creativity, and so on and so forth. The last life hack that I have here is the 2-minute morning journal. So this is a really great journal prompt. For those of you who are looking to just have some journal exercises, I know I always promote journaling on the Breakfast Club. I think that it is one of the greatest forms of healing, of transformation, and also just reducing overwhelm and anxiety. Whenever you find yourself in a space of overwhelm and anxiety, maybe you have a million things that you have to tackle, get those thoughts on paper or on a notepad, even if you just do it on your phone, but get in the habit of writing down different journal entries. And it can be about anything, but just getting your thoughts written down, it most certainly has helped me. Sometimes you're just like inundated with all these things you have to do, and your mind is confused, it's overwhelmed. And the moment you write it down, even if it's finances, let's say you're struggling with your finances, the moment you actually write out a budget and you look at what you're working with, you look at all of your options, you write down all of your alternatives, all the different scenarios, this definitely helps reduce anxiety and overwhelm. And it's been one of the greatest life hacks for me when it comes to just navigating through different challenges. So I would encourage you guys to do some form of journaling. And this 2-minute morning journal prompt basically is you writing down, I will focus on blank. I am grateful for blank. I am excited about blank. And you can do this daily, and you'll notice a major enhancement to your mental clarity. So let's just say, for example, I will focus on, and maybe that's you writing content or you producing content for the day, right? And that's your focus. Maybe it's in building your business. So you would put, I will focus on building my business. Next is I am grateful for. Now, the thing about gratitude is you can't be grateful and fearful at the same time. You can't be grateful and anxious at the same time. Two thoughts cannot occupy the mind simultaneously. So that's the power of just expressing some form of gratitude throughout the course of the day. And then lastly is I'm excited about. And excitement also, you get that boost in dopamine because it's something that you're looking forward to. So these are really great journal prompts, and it doesn't take very long. So for today, you can write what you will focus on. You can write down what you're grateful for, and you can write down what you are excited about. Now, we're going over to the fun facts. So here we go. The very first fun fact is, and I love sharing this one in particular, I always found it fascinating, and that's basically your body replaces itself every 7 years. So most of your cells regenerate over 7 years, meaning you are literally not the same person you used to be. Every cell in your body. And I always tell people, even every now and then I'll work with clients that are navigating through like shame or regret, and maybe they did something in the past that they were just shameful about. And I always have to remind people that, look, just a couple of years ago, like you were completely, literally a completely different person. And I find that to be quite liberating, right? So the fact that almost every single cell on your body, like your cells are renewing every single day. And by the time 7 years has gone by, you literally have had the vast majority of cells. I think the only ones, if I'm not mistaken, that don't get replaced are like your brain, some of your brain cells or something like that. You guys can look up the research, but you are literally a completely different human being. You know, from a physical sense, sometimes depending on how much you've grown, it can be mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I mean, think about how many of you, just even mentally, were a completely different person. Emotionally, we're a completely different person just a few years ago. And to match that, you also have physically, you are a completely different person. So really interesting fun fact. The next one we have is the Eiffel Tower. I know this is completely different, but the Eiffel Tower can grow more than 6 inches in the summer. Why is that? Because metal expands in heat, shrinking again in cold weather. So really interesting fun fact. And last but not least, the last fun fact we have here is your nose can remember 50,000 different scents, or right around 50,000 different scents. That's why smells can trigger powerful memories. So scents are really, really powerful. Any of you find that fascinating? Like you smell cologne that you probably use, or perfume that you probably used back in the day, or some scent brings you back to your childhood. Or maybe you even smell the scent of your home. Like everybody's home has like this distinctive smell. And it's fascinating, like just certain smells, even smelling certain foods, or the same applies to just music, right? There's certain music you'll listen to that it brings you back to a place of nostalgia. And that's because the brain tends to link your senses to past memories. So it may be a song, it may be a scent. And That's why just whenever you're creating memories for your loved ones, it is really, really like it's a great idea to link specific scents to it. And you'll find a lot of luxury hotels, for example, they'll have these very distinctive smells, right? And it's to link it to the memory. Like whenever you go to specific resorts, for example, I had launched this resort in Playa del Carmen, Mexico, and it's called the Fives. And the reason why it's called the Fives is because the intention of the resort is to focus on all five senses. They want you to have this visceral experience, this holistic experience where you're experiencing the resort in different ways, from the sights to the smells to the sounds and all those different things. So whenever you're creating beautiful memories for your loved ones, it is important not just to think of the overall experience, but think about the aesthetics, think about the vibe, think about all of those different aspects of how your family and friends are going to experience those moments. That's why there's a beautiful quote that says, music decorates space, art decorates time, right? Music decorates space, art decorates time. And this is why when you go into elevators, you'll oftentimes find that like big corporations will have some kind of music just to decorate the time that you're spending in the elevator. Or you go to a restaurant and they have some backdrop music to amplify the overall experience, right? So you tend to see this, or like just people who are intentional with decor, or certain companies or businesses that are intentional about decor because they want you to have an overall experience that's anchored to the memory. Okay, so next we have a few more shares before we jump into today's topic. The very next share that we have is from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and that is consider other people's wins as well as your own. So first and foremost, pick an important relationship that could benefit from win-win thinking. So whatever relationship that is, that may be your coworker, that may be a significant other, but what's an important relationship in your life that could very well benefit from a win-win thinking situation? Okay, so you want to write down your wins and the other person's wins. Don't know what they would consider a win? Simply ask. Okay, so let's say, for example, you're in a relationship and you want the relationship to be mutually beneficial, and you may very well want to provide value in that relationship, but don't make assumptions. Just ask whoever you're looking to provide a win-win situation with. Ask what can make this beneficial for you as well. And also ask yourself, in what relationships are you less likely to think win-win? What benefits would come from considering their wins? When we are highly effective, we value other people's wins equally to our own. We take time to identify both our wins and their wins. And this is really great if you're leading an organization, if you're leading a community. Always ask yourself, okay, well, obviously, you know, the work that you do is typically going to provide value for you, but how can you also make it a win for the people involved? Now, here's a really great quote from Stephen Covey. Win-win is not a technique. It's a total philosophy of human interaction. It is a frame of mind and heart that seeks mutual benefit in all interactions. Win-win sees life as a cooperative, not a competitive arena. So I love that. For me, I know whenever I'm doing business, for example, with people, I'm always thinking win-win. Like that's for me, it's not enjoyable if the party involved isn't benefiting from it. Like I know that's always been a major value for me. Like whoever I'm involved with in business, I always want to make sure that it's a mutually beneficial relationship. Now we have a few more shares and then we're going to jump into today's topic. Okay. Next up, we have, in addition to moving forward and moving away from values, there are 2 categories of values: end values and means values. For example, you may say you value your car, but it's merely a means to an end. In contrast, the end value you seek is an emotional state, such as excitement. So think Pontiac or prestige. you may think Mercedes. So excitement, you may think of a car like Pontiac. For those of you who ever had a Pontiac, some of you old timers. Prestige, you may think Mercedes, or maybe you want to feel a sense of safety and you think Volvo. All of these different brands have different experiences. So remember, our desire to meet our end values is the driving force behind all decision making. Unfortunately, people often make decisions out of their desire to meet their means values or goals, yet fail to achieve what's most important, and that's their end values. Their lives driving emotional needs. Okay, so this is really, really important because one of the things that I learned early on is that the quality of your life is dependent on the quality of emotions you consistently feel. Everything that we do with our day-to-day life is really just to feel a specific feeling. It's like when you go to the bar, right? If you go to a bar and you want to hang out, you may want to feel connected with other people and just hang out and get around a social environment. You may want to, let's just say, reduce some anxiety, and that's probably why you have a few drinks. You may want some variety, but all of these things are essentially to feel a certain way. Sometimes when we buy certain things, it's perhaps maybe so that we can feel good. Maybe you're indulging in some food and you're doing it for comfort, but we're always doing something as a means to an end. And it is important to really identify what is it that you're really after. Now, have you ever said, I really want to be in a relationship? Then you finally found one, and after a short time, you realize, I don't want a relationship. The reason is that the relationship was only a means to an end. What you really wanted was what you thought a relationship would give you, the end values of love, companionship, or intimacy. Relationships don't automatically lead to these more important values. You must know that these are your real goals and consistently interact with them in mind. Remember, you can achieve your means values in life, money, position, degree, children, relationships, and still be unhappy. Unless you live consistent with your deepest end values, you'll achieve, but still lack the ultimate fulfillment you truly deserve. So again, the moral of the story is really to always identify what are those means values. Okay, so let's jump into today's topic, which is going to be centered around the gap between inspiration and execution. And part one of what we're going to be covering today is going to be on awareness and mindset. And part two is going to be on execution strategy. So take notes, take notes. I always say, take notes as if you're going to have to teach this information later on in the day. And as we oftentimes say, the weakest ink is stronger than the strongest memory. So if you don't take notes, chances are you're probably going to forget a lot of what's shared here today. So I always say we're a note-taking community. And the more you take notes, again, history, note takers are history makers. And the more you take notes, the more likely you are to remember a lot of this content. So before we jump into today's meat and potatoes, I just wanted to share that we are going to be launching a 21 Days to Transformation Challenge with our community. And I decided to launch it. I realized that we have 4th of July, of course, and 4th of July, most people aren't going to be out there, focusing on the 21 to-dos when they're with their family and friends on 4th of July weekend. So what I'm going to do is launch the 21 Days to Transformation Challenge it is going to be around the 11th. The 11th, we're doing our Life Mastery. So we have Life Mastery Halftime. And for those of you who've never been to any of my Life Mastery events, they're typically 2 to 3 day virtual events, and it is free for everyone. And Life Mastery is pretty much, you can come on and experience different masterclasses on different topics that could essentially make your life better. So the Life Mastery is more than likely going to be July 11th and the 12th, possibly even the 13th. We'll see what it's looking like then. But we have enough time from now to then to pretty much get ready for the 21 to-dos as well that we'll be launching as our community. So here are a list of the 21 to-dos so you can mentally prepare yourself. And also, I am going to be having a a discounted rate. We have a 21 days to transformation challenge course. So I have an actual course with different video modules and everything like that that you can follow. And I have a 50% off promo for you guys, for the Breakfast Club community, specifically for those of you who want to have the course to pretty much launch into the challenge this upcoming July. So if you want information on that, just DM me the word course. I'll be more than happy to send that over to you. And you can for sure like just get a lot more material centered around it. The course is amazing because you kind of get like little mini master classes on how to take all of these things to the next level. And I have another course called the Holistic Edge coming out as well. So if you like information on that, I'd be more than happy to send it over to you. And also save the date. We have our Creators Conference coming up. Many of you know last year we launched a Creators Conference in Tampa Bay. This year we're going to be doing the same. And it's more than likely going to be in the fall. So we're solidifying the exact dates. It's either going to be late September or early October. And there are going to be creators coming from all over the world to fly in. And it's going to be amazing, guys. We're doing a Creators Awards ceremony. If you're an influencer, creator, entrepreneur, or just someone who's interested in building a brand or business online, this is definitely going to be the place to be. You'll be able to hang out with a lot of influencers and creators and entrepreneurs and network, and also be able to hang out with us, a lot of people from our community. So really happy about that. Now, let's jump into today's topic. And by the way, if you have any questions whatsoever, you're more than welcome to hit me up in my DMs. You can write the word coach, and I'd be more than happy to send you over any information. Also, every single week, I do my best to offer complimentary coaching sessions to our community. So just, again, DM me the word coach. I can always forward you my Calendly link. If you haven't done a complimentary coaching session with me in the past, or maybe it's been like over 6 months, this has been my way of providing value to the community outside of the Breakfast Club. And yes, DM me the word coach. I'll be more than happy to send you some information. I do a lot of different speaking engagements and coaching sessions as well. Like today, later on today, I'll be speaking for a nonprofit on gun violence. And I'm really excited about that. So every now and then, if I'm not doing coaching sessions, I'm out speaking. Many of you have probably seen my work on television as well for the NBC network that I shoot for. I'm typically a featured guest on there. So if you're new to my work, again, everything is centered around personal development, life coaching, things like that. So today we're specifically covering execution and inspiration, how to bridge that gap, how to get yourself from just being motivated and just being inspired to actually taking action on what you're motivated about. And also how to maintain it consistently. Because a lot of people, what I've discovered over the years is a lot of people, they'll go to a seminar, they'll listen to an audio, they'll get inspired maybe by a documentary. And, like this past weekend, I was watching the documentary Quincy, and it was on the life of, is it Quincy Jones? I believe it's Quincy Jones. Yeah. But I was watching the documentary, Quincy Jones, and it was one of the most inspiring documentaries I had ever seen on the life of Quincy Jones and his influence on the music industry and the different iconic people that he had worked with, from Frank Sinatra to Ray Charles to Michael Jackson and the Thriller album, and just his philanthropic endeavors over the years. And it is super inspiring, and also seeing his shortcomings, his flaws, and all of that. And I definitely recommend checking it out if you guys haven't seen it. Really great documentary. It's called Quincy, and you guys should be able to find it on Netflix. But all in all, sometimes you'll watch these documentaries like this and you're fired up and you're like, man, I want to do something great with my life. I'm inspired to be like this person. And you take action and you feel good in the moment. But guess what? Motivation wears off. It's like bathing. You have to do it every single day. You can't just bathe once and expect for that shower to last all week long, right? you have to consistently do it. And motivation tends to wear off. And it is important to have different ways to motivate yourself and get yourself inspired every single day, because if you don't have the consistency, discipline is pointless. Most things require prolonged, concentrated effort in order to bring a dream into fruition. In order to manifest anything, you're going to have to keep chipping away at it. It's not just a one-time thing where you can start and stop, start and stop. It doesn't work that way. You have to keep chipping away at it consistently. And over time, you eventually have these things come into fruition. Okay, so part one is going to be on understanding the gap. Again, the gap between inspiration and execution. So understanding the gap. Now, remember this, you don't need more inspiration. You need alignment, you need systems, and you need follow through. So how can you build alignment, right? And alignment with a life that is most ideal, most optimal, most conducive for whatever North Star it is that you're after. So maybe your North Star is in becoming a world famous podcaster, and you need to build alignment around that. So what would alignment look like for your North Star? Maybe you have a specific business that you're working on. Maybe you want to be a best-selling author. Maybe you want to be a public speaker. What does alignment look like? Well, first and foremost, alignment is your relationships. Birds of a feather flock together. You're going to be the average of the people that you spend the most time with. You hang around 9 broke people, you're bound to be the 10th. That's just the way it is. So relationships are a big part of alignment. Also, how do you dress? How do you carry yourself in public? Perceived value in the marketplace is super important. When you're building your brand, is your brand in alignment with the person that you ultimately want to, let's just say, attract? And that's going to be a big part of it. Also, your living space, your environment in terms of where you live, where you work, these types of things. So always seek alignment. Also, systems. What systems do you have in place? Many of you know that I oftentimes talk about calendar optimization. Calendar optimization is really setting up your DMO, your daily method of operation, the way you go about your day in such a way that it's optimal for who you are trying to become and what you are trying to manifest in your life. So if you're looking to become a more confident, bold, wiser person, right? A more resilient person, then again, what systems do you have in place to complement that? Do you have a system in place that promotes well-being? Like for me, for example, I have a certain amount of days throughout the week that I always exercise. That's just law. That's a big part of my system. For me as a family man, I have Sundays that I take off, right? For church, for family life. And that is specifically a system that I have in place for family, for friends, and every single weekend. That's a big part of the system because my relationships are also important to me. My spiritual life is important to me. Having time for prayer and meditation every single day. That's a big part of my system. Self-care, just going for a walk 3 miles a day on average, taking time to put in work for my business. That's a big part of my system. Content creation, a big part of my system. So how can you pretty much cultivate a system or engineer an environment that is most conducive, again, for what it is that you want to bring to life? And also follow through. Follow through. What do you have in place to ensure that you have follow through? And that's why coaching is so important. Having a coach in place. I have masterminds that I've invested in, coaching that I've invested in over the years, but what do you have in place to make sure that you follow through? It's interesting because sometimes I get the question like, how in the world are you helping people get these crazy results like that you work with? And my strategy has always been simple. We're going to set micro goals for the week, and we're going to set a consequence for not following through on those micro goals. So if the micro goal is getting into the gym for at least 30 minutes, then we're going to set that micro goal. And if you do not get into that gym, then you have to pay a consequence. And the consequence, oftentimes, it'll be like a financial fine. So let's say it may be something along the lines of $100 for every single day you do not get in the gym. Think about the likelihood of you getting in the gym if you knew you had a $100 fine hovering over your head by not following through. Think about if you had a fine for not posting up that content. What is the likelihood that you'll post up that content if you knew that you'd be charged a fine? And the thing about human nature is that we oftentimes do far more to avoid pain than to gain pleasure. So having those fines in place, having those consequences in place are going to ensure follow through. So my recommendation is if you don't have a coach, at least get an accountability partner. That way you guys make sure that you have some kind of follow through. Next, here's a really great journal prompt. What inspired idea have you been sitting on? And why haven't you acted on it yet? So what inspired idea? What have you thought about doing or you were inspired to do recently, but you just haven't gotten around to it? And why not? Why is that the case? So maybe your inspired idea is you want to launch a podcast. Well, what's stopping you from launching a podcast? What I've discovered is sometimes it's just taking the very first step. Remember, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. So don't get so caught up about when you will finally be ready. Just get the ball rolling, even if it's just one small step. That one small step may be just researching whatever it is that you want to do. But don't wait for the conditions to be perfect in order for you to get started, because guess what? The conditions will never really be perfect. And if you're waiting on conditions to be perfect to get started, you're never going to get started. So it's so much better just to get that momentum. Start off small, even if it's a slow start, but just start anyway. Next up, we have defining the gap. What is the gap between inspiration and execution? Why we chase the dopamine hit of new ideas, but avoid the discomfort of action. So that's typically what the gap is, right? So we have this dopamine rushing through us and we're motivated because we have these new ideas, but you also have the pain that's associated or the discomfort that's associated with taking action. So perhaps you want to build your business and you're inspired because you saw someone go out and build their business and they're on fire and you're like, man, I want that for myself. I want to be able to share my story on stage. I want to be able to impact lives. I want to be able to have freedom in my life. But then you get caught up in the process and the pain associated to the process. And the pain associated to the process may be going through rejection. You're like, okay, I know what I have to do. I'm inspired by the end vision, but I also have this process pain that I have to overcome. And that process pain may have to be you going through rejection. And that's really how you bridge the gap, is you have to figure out a way to get over the pain, right? And sort of like trick your brain into taking action. And there's a lot of different ways that you can go about this. For example, when it came to me for things like prospecting, right? I knew in some of my businesses that required me to actively reach out to potential customers, I had to possibly get rejected. And that was a big part of the process. So many times what I would do is I would do that specific task with other business partners, with other people who are after the same dream. So we'd all get together, we'd have the accountability, and it becomes more fun doing it that way. We kind of made a game out of it, right? Who can get rejected the most? So that could be a really great way of overcoming that fear of just rejection. And there's so many different tricks around that. Sometimes even just doing whatever's uncomfortable, doing it at the time of the day where you're most inspired. I remember when I used to work on boats, what I would do is in order to work out and also build my business, I would like drink a pre-workout energy because I knew that if I drank a pre-workout energy drink, I was not going to just sit there with pre-workout all jittery and everything. So I knew 100% that if I just could drink that pre-workout, I would be, inclined. And I don't drink pre-workout anymore. I wouldn't necessarily recommend this approach for those of you who are health conscious, because not all pre-workouts are created equal. However, it got me to take action. And what I would do is before working out, there's usually like a little window of time before that pre-workout kicks in, and that's when I would do my I would essentially do my prospecting. I would do it while I'm motivated, while I'm excited and fired up, and then I would jump into my workout. There were periods of time where I would go to the gym with a workout buddy, and directly after, I'd be, taking care of business. It was like a 15-minute window of time. So there's different ways you can go about productivity. There's different ways you can go about the follow through and the consistency when it comes to taking action. Okay. Now, understanding the emotional high of motivation versus the low dopamine grind of consistency. This is major. And I love this quote: inspiration is the spark, execution is the fire. So inspiration will be the spark, but execution is the fire. So you'll have these emotional highs, right? But how do you keep yourself on an even keel? How do you keep yourself up, right? And keep yourself going even when you don't feel like doing what you need to do. I remember a mentor of mine would always say, do what you know, not what you feel. Because chances are life is going to be lifing. And you're going to have those moments throughout the day where you just don't feel like doing it. But how can you wrap your mind around doing what you know, not what you feel? And one of the best ways you can do it is by blocking out your calendar and making this a lifestyle change, making it a lifestyle choice, making it as consistent as brushing your teeth, as going to the gym, right? There are certain things that have to be a must for the day. And when you can get to that place where you get that rhythm, like this is who I am, this is what I do, then you no longer have to really think about how daunting it is, because it becomes unconscious competence. That's the goal for the thing that you dread doing the most, for it to become unconscious competence where you can do it with your eyes closed and you already know that during the day, this is something that I'm going to be doing. And you don't really put much thought into it. That's the thing for most people, is they're dreading having to do that very thing because they don't do it every day. So when you get yourself in the habit of just doing the hard stuff over and over and over, it just becomes a big part of your identity and who you are. Now, understand this. There's a real cost of inaction. Remember, taking action is a choice, but inaction, not taking action, is also a choice. And there is a cost associated for inaction. You may think that you can get away with just taking a day off, taking a week off, taking a month off. And there are those moments where you genuinely have to avoid burnout, right? But there are a lot of people who are like, oh, well, I'll get around to it. Oh, I'll get around to it tomorrow. Well, today was a tough day, like it's been a long day. Let me get around to it tomorrow. And success, listen, the rent is due every single day. There is no shortcut. As cliche as that sounds, there's no shortcut when it comes to success. The rent is due every single day. So you have to get yourself into a space where, again, you're doing what you know, not necessarily what you feel. You don't want to rely on just how you feel every single day. Okay, because there are going to be a lot of moments where you just don't feel like doing it. And that's what separates the people who win versus those who don't. The ones who win can get themselves to do the work even when they don't feel like doing it. So there's a real cost of inaction. Now, how unexecuted ideas create frustration, guilt, and identity crisis, right? Because procrastination and perfectionism are essentially survival tactics, not necessarily laziness. Right? Understand that procrastination is a survival tactic. Perfectionism is a survival tactic. It's not necessarily a part of your identity. You're doing it because it's the most comfortable thing to do. We always, as human beings, want to seek pleasure and avoid pain. And if you associate pain for taking action, or you associate pain to taking action, then it's going to be very difficult to actually take action, right? Now, if you consistently go about your life where you're going through a string of days where you're not doing anything, understand that you will hit a brick wall. And there's going to be a part of you that feels very shallow, a part of you that feels like there's a void in your life because you know that you're not living up to your potential. And you will hit that point where you may experience an identity crisis, or you live a life of guilt, of frustration, right? But you can't be upset about the results you're getting, for the work that you didn't do. Don't be mad at the results that you're not getting if you're not putting in the work, right? So there will be that feeling of guilt or shame if you do not do what you know what's best for you, if you do not live up to your potential. And the pain of regret weighs tons, right? The pain of discipline weighs ounces. And you have to ask yourself, which is more painful? The pain of taking action and the pain of discipline, or the pain of regret? And usually at the end of your life, for most people, the regret of the dying is not what they did, but what they didn't do. It's not what they did. Is you typically don't regret what you did in your life. You regret what you didn't do in your life, right? The chances you didn't take, the times you didn't believe in yourself, the times you didn't take action and do what you know you should. And the beautiful thing about taking action is that it may be painful in that moment, but the feeling of pride in yourself, the feeling that you did something that your future self can thank you for, there's a sense of dignity that you have in yourself, a sense of self-worth that is cultivated by being a person of action, by being a person that constantly executes on what they should be doing. Okay, understand that we all have these deep fears. And for some people, the deep fear may be failure. And for others, believe it or not, the deep fear may be success. Isn't that crazy how you can be fearful of failure, but you could also be fearful of success? And my question to you, and drop a comment if you guys don't mind, drop a comment on what fear out of the two, which have you encountered in your life, or have you encountered both? Right? Both if you have experienced both, or if it was the fear of failure, right? Failure. If it was the fear of success, right? Success. I'm curious, how many of you have encountered the fear of failure at some point in time in your life? I know for me, it's actually been the fear of success. It hasn't really been the fear of failure per se. I just always believed that I would make it. Like anything that I put my mind to, I always believed that I would be able to accomplish it. But the fear of the success, like, am I going to be able to manage this? Or, man, what happens when I put myself out there, right? Like having to deal with, let's just say, the people who troll you on social media, having to deal with imposter syndrome, right? Feeling like you're not good enough. I most certainly have been there. I see a bunch of you commenting the fear of failure, and that'll also cripple you, right? Just like, man, what if I fail? And really what it is, it's our egos. It's our pride. You're fearful of being judged, being laughed at, being mocked, being ridiculed. And I most certainly have had those moments in time where it is like, man, if it doesn't work, this is going to be humbling. This is going to be humbling. And the thing about it is, when it comes to your dreams, if your dreams do not scare you, they are simply not big enough. It's okay to be fearful, because excitement also, excitement comes from the same place fear comes from, right? Like they kind of go hand in hand. It's like if you're going to give a public speech. Many times these days, I remember I used to be fearful of giving a public speech and like, man, what if I bomb on this speech? What if people laugh at me on this speech, or I completely ruin it? And it was terrifying, right? But there was also that part of me that was genuinely excited. And eventually it became just excitement, right? Like now I know that I have to do a speaking engagement later on this afternoon, and there's no part of me that is fearful, right? If you had came to me 10 years ago, I would have had that part of me like, man, little nervous. My heart is beating. Your hands may get a little, clammy, and you're sweating, right? And eventually you do it enough where it becomes excitement. It becomes excitement. Or maybe you're a little bit fearful, but there's that part of you that's genuinely excited as well. And it's okay to be like that. I remember before every wrestling match, right? I used to wrestle in high school, and I'd enter these tournaments. And I remember before every single wrestling match, I had a ritual and I had to use the bathroom because I was just so nervous. And many times I wasn't even going up against someone that was more superior. It was just the nervousness of like, what if I mess up? What if I get embarrassed in front of everybody watching? Right. And I know what that's like. So it's okay to be somewhat fearful. It's okay to be nervous. And if you're nervous and you're fearful, chances are it's because it's important to you. It's important to you. And that's a good thing. Why would you ever want to pursue something that didn't mean a lot to you? Right? So this is a part of the process, and it's important to embrace this. Now, going back to survival tactics, perfectionism. I used to struggle with this a lot. And one thing that I can tell you guys is if perfectionism is the enemy to execution. If you're someone that's always wanting to be perfect, you're going to have a very difficult time. This is one of the saddest things that I see with a lot of people that I work with, is them getting so wrapped up around perfectionism that they just end up doing nothing. They end up having paralysis of overanalysis. And don't be the person that's always wanting to be perfect with every little thing that you do. This is going to sabotage your productivity. And I see this happen over and over again. And it's unfortunate because perfectionists typically, like, they want to put out great work. They have a high standard of excellence. However, if that high standard of excellence gets in the way of execution, then you're not going about it in the best way. Because it's so much better just to start, even if it's not pretty, even if it's not the very best, it's so much better just to get the ball rolling and get some momentum, and then work on making it as good as you possibly can make it on your way. I remember when I first started doing the Breakfast Club, it was scrappy as hell. Like, it did not look like this. We didn't have the fancy cameras and all of that stuff, and the fancy lighting, right? It was super scrappy, or even just the fancy audio with the bougie mics and all of that. We didn't have all of this great equipment when we first started the Breakfast Club. But you know what? If we waited for all of that, it would have taken forever to finally get it perfect, right? But there were a lot of people that appreciated the authenticity of it, right? Even though it wasn't like the best quality, there was still substance in the message, right? And sometimes people are just like, they want to wait till they have that fancy piece of equipment. Listen, just put out the message. Just go for it. You could always, polish things up as you go. Okay, next up, we have, you have to do an internal audit. And that internal audit is asking yourself, what's blocking me? What's blocking me? I want you guys to think for a second, like, just reflect on what is the main thing blocking you right now from taking action with whatever it is that you're working on. I know for me, 9 out of 10 times, it's distraction. It's not belief. It's not confusion. It's not having the vision. Like, everything is typically clear. It's the distraction. It's not setting my intention. It's not blocking it out on my calendar. And understand this. You guys hear me say this all the time. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. If you do not have that thing on your calendar, chances are you're not going to follow through on it. Okay, so that's why it's super important to really identify what is blocking you. Sometimes it's those relationships that are distracting you. Sometimes it's the doom scrolling on social media. That's blocking you because you're not being productive, because you're spending hours upon hours just going through social media. And perhaps deleting your social media may be the very thing that you need to do in order to take action. Sometimes what's blocking you is not having clarity. Remember, clarity of intention equals power. The more crystal clear you are on what you have to do, the more likely you are to do that very thing. So what are you not crystal clear on? Do you know the objective? Do you know what is your big three or your three to thrive for the day? The three things that you have to do today to really get the results that you're looking for. So what's blocking you? Do you feel like it's your children? Do you feel like it's the clutter in your house? Do you feel like it's watching television? What is genuinely blocking you? Sometimes it's just belief. Sometimes it's your mindset. Okay, so you want to explore inner resistance. Is it the fear of failure? Is it the fear of visibility? Because that was the case for me. I know a lot of people who struggle with content creation because they do not like the sound of their voice, or they're fearful about getting comments. I mention all the time how it took me years to finally put the Breakfast Club on a public platform, right? I used to do it in private groups all the time, and it was honestly just my fear of being trolled. And I had to overcome that as well. So the fear of visibility. I know when we launched Creators Conference, one of the things that was very uncomfortable for me was being on an ad, on a public ad, right? And I'd see haters like troll on other people. And for me, I'm like, man, I really dreaded having to go through that. But again, if you want to be admired by thousands, you have to be willing to take ridicule from a few dozen ignorant ones. I remember my mentor would always say that if you want to be admired by thousands, you have to be willing to take ridicule from a few dozen ignorant ones. Just how it is. Jim Rohn would always say that the haters, in like there aren't a lot of haters. It's about a dozen of them, but they just move around a lot. You know, there's not a whole bunch. You'll have a lot more people who love you, a lot more people who love your work and appreciate your work than you will haters. There's just a handful of them. They just move around a lot, right? So it's important to acknowledge that and understand that that's also a prerequisite for greatness. You're going to have to encounter people who just don't rock with your message. And that's okay. You're not going to be everybody's cup of coffee. Don't try to get caught up in pleasing everyone, because the price of trying to please everyone will be you not being authentic, you not being who you really are at your core. The price is you end up putting on a mask, a persona to fit the mold that everybody else wants you to be, and you lose yourself in the process. Okay, so fear of visibility, sometimes it's imposter syndrome, feeling like, who am I to give advice on this? Who am I? Like, I remember I had imposter syndrome even about life coaching, because I was so young when I started. I had started right around my mid-20s, and I'm like, who am I to give a 45-year-old advice on life? And here I am, like fresh out of college a couple years later, and I hadn't started having kids. Well, I probably had my first kid when I first started coaching, right? But I was like, who am I? Who am I to give advice on marriage? And my marriage isn't the greatest, right? But imposter syndrome also is a prerequisite for greatness. You're never going to feel completely like you're worthy or deserving. And maybe you're a rare exception. But I know for most people, you're not always going to feel like you're qualified per se. But the thing about it is, you have to separate the teacher from the teaching. Is the value that you're sharing still valuable? Don't get caught up on yourself. Like, take your ego out of it. Is it good information? Is it valuable information? Can people benefit from the information? Don't get so caught up in trying to be perfect. Yes, you aspire to be the best version of you, right? But understand that you're also perfectly human. You're perfectly imperfect. And that's what it means to be human. Like, we're flawed. In fact, people will love you for your flaws. People will connect with you because of how authentic and real you are. It's okay with not being Mr. Perfect. It took me years to realize this, to come to the realization that, man, Josh, people actually like you when you're way more scrappier. People like you when you're way more real, when you expose your soft underbelly and express your shortcomings, right? So understand that. I remember I entered a speaking competition one time. It was like America's Got Talent, but for the best speakers in the country. And I remember one of the judges gave this critique to the speakers, and the judge basically said this. They said, try not to be perfect with your speech. Sounds counterintuitive, right? It's like if you're entering a speech competition, you would think that you would want to be polished, you'd want to be mindful of your filler words and stuttering and all of these different things. You'd want structure. And in fact, the speeches that actually made it to the very end weren't perfect speeches. They were speeches that touched the human heart. They were speeches that were able to connect with people on an emotional level, right? They were people that had messed up their life, people who had stories, people who turned their mess into an inspiring message, people who were perfectly imperfect. Those were the speeches that made it to the very end. And it was a big learning lesson for me, because here I was trying to be this Toastmaster, right? Many of you know that I was a big part of Toastmasters for about a decade of my life, and it's a speaking organization where you refine your speaking. But what I discovered was I actually had to, I don't want to say dumb down my speeches, but I had to humanize them. I had to have people feel like they could relate to me and actually work on not being so perfect. So it sounds crazy, but as a speaker, people like people that they can connect with. And I remember the judge basically saying that if you try to be perfect, people are going to hate your speech. They are not going to like it. People love the people who are just real. And it's important to remember that and remind yourself of that. Perfection isn't always the best path. Okay. Next, we have comfort addiction. So your inner resistance can be comfort addiction. And that comfort addiction can honestly be you enjoying your time on the weekends with your family and enjoying time to do the barbecues and play your game and just chill out, have a beer, sit on the couch, Netflix and chill, all of these different things. And your comfort zone, unfortunately, is your broke zone. There's just no way you're going to build wealth at the highest levels. I've never met anyone massively successful from a financial standpoint that has constantly lived in their comfort zone. There's just no room for it when it comes to becoming successful. Now, are there moments where you can just reset, take some time to relax and catch yourself? Absolutely. Because burnout is a serious thing. And if you're constantly on the grind, you will eventually hit burnout if you do not take some time for yourself. However, you have to be very careful, because not only can you become comfortable, but the very people that you do life with can also draw you to the land of the common man. They can draw you and try to reel you in to the comfort zone and doing things that just feel good for the moment, doing things that aren't necessarily beneficial to what it is that you want to do with your life. So intentionality is a big part of this process. You have to be intentional with everything that you do, the environments that you frequent, the people that you hang around with. Okay, everything has to be intentional if you're going to make it to the highest levels. Here's a really great journaling prompt. What belief or habit is currently blocking your execution? What belief or habit is currently blocking your execution? I know for me, the habit of not putting things on my calendar, that was a big one, right? I'll say like, okay, I'll know it mentally. I'm like, okay, I got to do this for the day. But then life starts lifing throughout the day and something else will take its place. And because I didn't schedule it, because I didn't set my intention to block out my calendar for a specific time, it ended up not happening. So this is super important, right? But sometimes it's also belief. Sometimes you may have the belief that, you know what, maybe I'm not good enough. And that's your belief. And that's the one thing blocking you from executing. Maybe your belief is, well, I need to do this first in order to bring this to life. I need to make this purchase first, or I need this in place, or I need to do it in this order, right? But is that really true? Is it true that you need to do this first in order for it to work? Or is there an alternative path that you can take? Okay, so name and claim your primary block. What exactly it is? Drop a comment, right? What's your main block? I know for me, again, it's just not being intentional about blocking time in my calendar. That's usually it. Back in the day, there used to be a lot of mental blocks, like just the fear of rejection, right? That was a big one for me back then. Just feeling as if my family and friends, when I reached out to them about my product or opportunity, them feeling like I'm like a salesman, right? And don't care about them. I had these mental blocks. So those were some of the things, but drop yours in the comments if you guys don't mind. All right. The illusion of readiness. It's the next one. The illusion of readiness. So here's the truth. Readiness is a myth. Action creates confidence. So many people, they want to feel ready. I remember when I became a father, I was not ready to be a father. That was not a part of the plan. We did not plan our first child. And it just happened. My wife and I ended up having a child years before we had intended. And guess what? We were not ready. I was just like, man, like, what do I do? Like, is there something that I have to read? Do I have to go to like some classes or something? And then I thought about like the millions and millions of people before me that have had kids just not ready. Like my mom was a teenager when she had me. She was definitely not ready. She was on her second child, right? She was not ready. She didn't have a home to live in or anything like that. And it still worked itself out. Don't feel as if you have to have everything ready. Now, I'm not telling you to go out there and just start popping out babies and not plan, right? It's definitely not what I'm saying. But just know that just because you aren't ready doesn't mean that you can't get started. That's really the biggest message. So you want to reframe, I don't need to feel ready, to I need to feel responsible. Okay? So you want to reframe it. I don't need to feel ready. I need to feel responsible. That's the idea. So having the capacity for responsibility, that's really what it is. Because we're never going to feel completely ready. But you need to be responsible if you're going to take action. So how do you cultivate that? And you want to shift from waiting to preparing. Don't wait for clarity, build it. Don't wait for clarity, build it. Take the first step. Okay. Next up, we have building the bridge to execution. So this is all on strategy and identity. Okay. So I'm going to give you an execution framework. Here are the 5 steps. The 5 steps, write them down. The first step is the idea. Okay. That is the first step to execution, the idea. You have to have the vision. Remember, without vision, the people perish. You have to have some North Star that you're after. Clarity of intention is power. Secondly, the plan. Okay. I call it the 3 Ps. The picture, right? What's the vision? The picture, the process, and the purpose. Or the picture, the purpose, the process. Those are like the 3 essential things that you need. Okay. But going back to the 5 steps, the second is the plan. Right? So the plan may be the process of how you go about it. Okay. You also, thirdly, you need the system. Now, the system will help you with consistency because sometimes you have the plan in place. You know what you need to do, but you don't have the system for the follow through, the system to ensure that you do it long after you don't feel like doing it. Fourth is the action, actually taking action. And the 5th is reflection. And the reason why reflection is so important is because sometimes you need to course correct. Sometimes perhaps the way you're going about the very thing that you need to be doing is not the most optimal way, and you have to reflect. So that's a big part of it. So the 5 steps for execution is the idea, the plan, the system, the action, and the reflection. Okay. Now, remember, sometimes when it comes to unlocking your potential, it's not that you don't have the combination. You may have the combination, the exact numbers that you need to unlock your potential, but you don't have the right sequence. And oftentimes, that's what happens for people. They have the right combination, but not the right sequence. And that's why they don't unlock their potential. Okay, so that's why also going over your plan, going over your system is essential. Now, You want to turn inspiration into a practical roadmap. Micro goals, for example. You want to break the big idea perhaps into 3 small moves. So maybe the big idea is you losing 30 pounds. And your 3 small moves may be going for a walk every single day or hiring a personal trainer. Maybe that might not be a small move for you, but it is for some people. And it could also be just eliminating all of the junk in your refrigerator and in your closets, your pantry, right? Completely changing your diet. And those can be the 3 things. Maybe you give up drinking soda and you replace it for drinking seltzer water or something like that, right? You eliminate the sugars. Sometimes those 3 small moves may be eliminating certain things. It may be fried food, right? It may be starches. It may be sweets. And those are your 3 small moves. But you have to identify those 3 small micro goals that can get you closer to your goals. Okay, you also have to have daily non-negotiables. Daily non-negotiables. So for me, for example, prayer and meditation is a non-negotiable. Exercise is a non-negotiable. Putting time into my business is a non-negotiable. Spending time with my family is a non-negotiable. So what are your non-negotiables throughout the course of the day? And you want to build momentum with 10 to 30 minutes of focused effort per day on whatever it is that you're working on. So maybe you don't have it in you for the day to do 30 minutes, but you say, you know what? I'm just going to go in, and even if it's 10 minutes, you still are having the ability to maintain whatever it is that you're working on. Okay, so next we have habits that anchor execution. So there are keystone habits that impact pretty much everything. Okay, so that could be your morning routine, which is your morning habits. And it's always good. I find it really, really helpful to, rather than thinking about these things as discipline, just think of them as your lifestyle. Replace the word discipline for lifestyle, because sometimes discipline feels a bit rigid. Discipline feels like something you have to do as opposed to something you get to do, right? I don't have to go to the gym. I get to go to the gym. And when you reframe it in that way, it's a lot less daunting. So what are your morning routines? You also have your digital disciplines. Maybe your digital discipline is you updating your calendar. Maybe your digital discipline is you focusing on your content creation, right, for the day. But you have to have some digital discipline. Next is scheduling accountability. Scheduling accountability. So you may have an accountability partner. For me, the Breakfast Club, there's a level of accountability that comes with it because it's scheduled every single Tuesday, 7 a.m. without fail. You can trace back the last 7 years of my life and you can find 95%, maybe 99% of the Tuesdays over the last 5 years, you would find me doing the Breakfast Club. It's the accountability. It's the follow through. Okay. Now, there's a 2-minute rule to beat procrastination. I love this rule. And you basically ask yourself, what's one small habit I can commit to daily that moves this forward? Right? What's one small habit I can commit to daily that moves this forward? So perhaps the 2-minute rule might be you just creating content for 2 minutes. You give yourself 2 minutes just to create content. Even if you don't finish within the 2 minutes, what will happen is you'll find yourself building momentum. So what if you say, all right, I'm just going to go walking for 2 minutes, not 30 minutes, not even 20 minutes or 10 minutes, just 2 minutes. I can guarantee you that once you get outside, chances are you're going to go more than 2 minutes, right? So this 2-minute rule goes a long way. What if it's just cleaning your room for 2 minutes? You say, you know what? I really don't feel like cleaning this room. But you give yourself 2 minutes. What will happen is you're like, all right, I can do it. I can do a few more minutes of this. So give yourself 2 minutes for things that are very difficult. Maybe it's prospecting, right? And you're super fearful to prospect. And you say, you know what? I'm only doing 2 minutes of this. And you send out those 2 messages to 2 prospects. And that's your 2 minutes. Guess what? You're probably going to do more than that, right? After 2 minutes. So sometimes it's just starting. Sometimes it's just getting the wheels turning. That's all you need in order to build that momentum. So really great 2-minute rule to beat procrastination. All right, you guys getting value so far? If you're getting value, drop a V in the comments for value. You want to make sure you guys are still with me here. All right, next up, we have, as we get ready to wind down here, designing your environment for success. Now, when it comes to designing your environment, understand that you have your physical environment, you have the digital environment, and you also have your social environment. It's crazy. When was the last time you really thought about your environment as a digital environment? But think about where your attention lies every single day. You have your attention on the physical world, but for most people, for hours upon hours throughout the day, they also have their focus and attention on the digital world or in the digital world. So this is very well a big part of your reality. So you also have to be cognizant of your digital environment and also your social environment, because chances are you're probably around people throughout the day. So when it comes to your physical environment, does your space energize or distract you? Does it energize or distract you? If you have a bunch of clutter, guess what? A cluttered home is a cluttered mind. A cluttered mind is a cluttered life. Just the way it is. If your home is cluttered, you're probably thinking about the clutter, and that's occupying mental space that you could be using towards things that could actually help you. Okay, next we have your digital environment. Now, with your digital environment, think of this: the notifications that pop up on your phone. I block all notifications. There aren't no notifications that pop up on my phone. I completely block them because I don't want to constantly have my phone pinging me and my focus is just stretched in because I'm always looking at my phone for every notification. You also have task managers. You have blockers, things that you can, like softwares and apps that you can use to block certain things from coming through, right? You can go on certain apps and prevent those notifications from coming through. I don't even have emails notifying me, okay? So that's also a big part, your digital environment. And lastly, your social environment. Who holds you accountable and who drains your energy? Y'all know exactly who I'm talking about. Those energy vampires in your life. There are family and friends who just literally drain your energy after one conversation in the room. There are people that will walk into a room and suck the entire energy out of the room. We all have family and friends like that, right? So it is important to identify who you have to have limited association with because they just drain your energy. And think of the people that fill you with energy, right? People who boost you instead of drain you. Spend more time with those people. Now, here's something really good to reflect on. What in your environment needs to change in order to support your goals? What in your environment needs to change in order for you to, or in order to support your goals? Okay. This is big. I know for me, every single time I need to make a change or I need to crank up my productivity, I always go back to, okay, how does my home look? Right? Like, do I need to clean everything up? And do I need to get the, like, do I have to fold up my clothes and like do that and get that right? Because your outer world is going to be a direct reflection of your inner world. So I always start with my core. Okay. Next, as we wind down here, we have emotional mastery for execution. Emotional mastery for execution. Understand that emotional triggers sabotage consistency. Any of you say like, man, I'm going to be productive today. I'm going to make it happen. I'm motivated. I'm ready to go. And then you have something that triggers you. Somebody says something to you and it makes you feel some kind of way. Somebody does something and it triggers the hell out of you. It annoys you. And then it kills your energy. It sucks the life force out of you. And you end up not following through. Can anybody relate to that? Drop a Y in the comment if you can relate to that. If you can relate to having something trigger you throughout the day and it completely knocks you off your game and it sabotages your consistency. So you have to identify these triggers and you have to know when they arise, right? That's why it is good to do some self-inventory. What are the things that trigger me throughout the day and how can I avoid them? Perhaps it's just a different perspective. Perhaps it's going into your day with the mindset that I will not allow anyone to rob me of my joy. I would not allow anyone to prevent me from building my dreams. And going into your day with some intention. Now, you want to learn to recognize when fear, right, is when you have action in spite of it, like you have to have action in spite of the fear. I think it was Nelson Mandela, if I'm not mistaken, that he said, courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is feeling the fear and doing it anyway. Taking action in spite of the fear. That's what courage is about. Also, you got to learn to recognize, right? When you have overwhelm, how do you break it down? How do you break down your overwhelm? And again, for me, it's been writing it down. Whenever I'm overwhelmed, I just say, you know what? Let me focus on one thing. Rather than focusing on the 17 things that need to be done, let me focus on the next thing. Let me focus on the small thing, the things that are actually attainable, the things that I can do right now. That's how you break it down. Maybe it's the 2-minute rule, and that's how you break down overwhelm, just bite-sized chunks. When you have doubt, take the next best step. Okay, so whenever you're doubtful, it's like, okay, maybe you're doubtful on whether or not you'll be able to make it happen with this business. But perhaps there's one small step that you can take that even though you're having those doubts, you take the step and guess what? You build the momentum. And the doubt is not as strong because you have that momentum that you're rallying with. Okay. You also have a self-coaching flow. This is a big thing that I do. Like I self-coach myself. And this could be one of the best things that you do. So for example, you can name it, frame it, move anyway. There's certain things that you can do throughout the day to like self-coach yourself. So I always go back to my training. You know, there's a saying in the military, you trust your training, right? And there are certain things that you know that are timeless, It may be writing out your goals. It may be eating better. It may be getting more sleep. But there are times where you have to self-coach yourself. You have to speak life into yourself. Okay, so as we get ready to wind down, we have also an identity shift. So the identity shift is to become the doer. Identify as someone who takes action. I always say I'm a certified trigger puller. That's my identity. I'm someone who takes action. I'm someone who executes. And even though that may not have always been the case, imagine if you can cultivate an identity of someone who takes action, right? Really, really important. Understand that execution is identity driven. Execution is identity driven. So sometimes people will get so used to laziness that they start to identify with laziness, right? They even have their family and friends call them lazy and they kind of, identify with it. But you have to be intentional about having an identity of someone who always takes action, someone who's punctual, someone who's disciplined, someone who's consistent, and speak life into yourself. Talk about your discipline, talk about your consistency. Never say something about yourself that you don't want to be true. So if you're constantly saying, man, I'm terrible with my discipline, or I suck at punctuality, or I'm always late. Listen, the more you say that, the more it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy for yourself. So always catch yourself whenever you say these things that you don't want to be the case for your life. All right. So super important to understand, right? Now, here's a really good statement. I'm not trying, I'm becoming, right? It's not about trying, it's about becoming. And ask, who is the version of me that finishes what they start? Take some time to reflect on that for a second. Who is the version of you that finishes what they start? What does that look like for you? Someone that has this mentality like, I finish what I start. If I'm going to start it, I'm going to finish it and follow through. Here's a really great visualization exercise. Step into the energy, posture, and mindset of that version of you and anchor it in. So think about it. That's why I always say when you think about your North Star, don't just think about how you want to live. Think about who you want to be. Who is the person that's worthy of the attainment of the very thing that you're after? If you want to be a multimillionaire, what version of you is worthy of that? Because the reality is you don't necessarily get what you want, you get what you deserve. You have to put in the work. You have to be the person, that's worthy of what it is that you want. So step into that energy, that posture. What's your swag like? How do you walk? How do you talk? What's your mentality? Do you have this unshakable mentality when it comes to just what you want to do, and have an anchor for it? Have an anchor. What does that look like for you? Okay, so here's a closing challenge and a call to action for you guys. Just to recap these core lessons, remember, execution beats excitement. Execution beats excitement. Progress beats perfection. Progress beats perfection. And it's always going to be identity is greater than goals. Your identity is greater than goals. Because if you have the identity, right, and you identify with a specific person and you have that North Star that's very clear, the goals will take care of themselves, right? If the why is strong enough, the how is irrelevant, because the why will pull you when motivation can no longer push you. So here's my weekly challenge to you. Choose one idea you've been sitting on, whatever it is, identify one step and do it within the next 24 hours. Whatever that is for you. Maybe it's starting that, starting that book. Maybe it's launching that podcast. Maybe it's launching that business. But identify one step that you can take and do it within the next 24 hours, no matter how small. Okay, and here's a great quote to close us out. Inspiration without execution is just entertainment. How amazing is that? Inspiration without execution is just entertainment. So for those of you who have a dream, right? Maybe you're inspired after this Breakfast Club. If you don't do nothing about it, it's just entertainment. This is just a Breakfast Club session to give you some goosebumps, right? Remember, knowledge isn't power. The application is knowledge. The application of the knowledge is power. So take what you learn from here. Take the tools, the strategies, all of these different things and actually apply it. Find something small. Remember, you don't have to be great to start. Just start to be great. That's the idea more than anything. And my hope is that you guys find something that you can do today to just inch you a little bit closer to the goal line. And I'm so excited for this 21 Days to Transformation Challenge, because these 21 to-dos are little things that you can do. Little things that you can do that can help you become the very best version of you. So, ladies and gentlemen, breakfast is officially served. Once again, for those of you who are looking to kick off the second half strong, you're more than welcome to book my Calendly link. And I'll drop my Calendly link in all of the comments. You'll be able to find it in the comments wherever you are tuning in from. And you're more than welcome to book. The spots fill up really, really quick. So just a heads up on that. But go in the comments. If you don't see it for whatever reason, just let me know. DM me the word coach. I'll be more than happy to send that over to you. But breakfast is officially served. God bless you all. And I'll be seeing you all next week. Take care, everyone.